Committee and Broadband Task Committee. Uh, Do a roll call. I guess everybody's here. I guess I'm not, like you said, everybody's here, but,
Yep, we have everyone except for Chase Potter and Terry Nichols.
okay, so these. All right. Moving on to our next public comments. Anything on the line?
Nothing.
Anybody here got anything to say? No? I'm gonna move right through this quick. Approve the minutes from the last meeting. You guys have them in front of you? I wasn't here, so I don't know if that's what was. Motion made, second?
Second.
By Bill, okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Discuss the work items. Next on the agenda, broadband information hub web updates. I assume that's you, Dan?
Yes. All right. I will, at our last meeting, if you remember correctly, we had representatives from a bunch of the providers there, and part of our agenda was to kind of talk about how we could get the word out or have some sort of information available to residents to be able to find out for themselves what where they live and what the service is like in that area, and whether grants had been provided and what provider they should contact. Lots of conversation about that, and how that can be done. And since then, the Public Service Commission had provided the Broadband Challenge Map, which essentially has all of that information. It requires a little bit of interpretation that is probably hard for many people to really dig into, but ultimately anyone that is considered eligible for the grant, for the BEAD grant, does not have service, and there is not a grant provided for their area. So what I did is I went and updated our Dunn County Broadband page, included a little bit of more information about this committee, because the website hadn't been updated to recognize the creation of this committee, and the broadband plan that had been created by a previous iteration of this committee. And then I put the broadband challenge map out on here with a little bit of information. And this page also has direct contact information to the to contact broadband at co.dunn.wi.us, which ultimately comes to me. But I've actually received a few emails about that over the last couple weeks. And if you live in the area, you may have seen that we did have a news story ran on broadband in Dunn County, of which Dave was the star of the show. I was also on there as well, but and I think that actually drew a lot of people to ask questions. So we got a lot of feedback about that, and been directing people through this page. So just want to let you know this was updated, and if there's anything that you think would be helpful, let me know. And I guess kind of get the word out if you do run into people that have questions about broadband, or if you can bring that up, I guess wherever you are. If they ask us, I can help them identify who they need to, who they should talk to, or how long they might have to wait. So it's been, like I said, been good. Gotten a few inquiries in the last week. So pretty much all I have on that.
Any questions?
Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman, Dan, I have a question.
Mhm.
I'm kind of old fashioned here and I'm used to, getting my copy and I look at this and I can pull it up on my computer
Mhm.
and get all this.
Mhm.
And so I don't have an agenda in front of me because I didn't pull it up.
Mhm.
I assume it's on that,
The link to this is not on there.
go to
no.
Dunn County is the agenda on there for today's meeting?
No, that's out on our public meeting calendar for the
I don't-
county.
Did the rest of you pull that up? I didn't do it. Am I the only one?
You should have received an email from Krista Vind last
Ah.
Friday with the link.
Well,
So I will. Yep. So yeah, this is where the agenda is.
yeah, I can't read that, but is that it
This is the agenda.
for
Yep.
today?
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep. If you prefer to, otherwise you can use your computer. Yep.
I printed off the one you
Yeah.
had, but I didn't get one from Christie.
Okay.
I have a
I will.
computer like this at home.
Yeah.
I could do it.
Yeah.
But I
Uh,
think we're all probably in this boat.
All right. I will.
Your computer, laptop, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you got it.
I'll verify.
Yeah, I was gonna print.
So,
Uh,
I'll make sure that email, we're changing up some of our processes about getting agendas out. Make sure that got out to everybody. I assumed. What?
I mean, I had a busy morning and the last thing
You got
I had was kind of ship.
I had a busy morning. I did not talk to my computer today. I just barely made it to the meeting.
Different than mine.
Yep.
I tried.
We can work through some changes on that.
I couldn't get it to go. My finger.
Was it Monday?
Yeah, Krista.
Oh, yep. Came
Now
on
you
Monday.
got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now you can have it back.
I should get an IT. Yeah,
Oh, you got it printed.
I got
Yeah.
it. I'm good. You can
All right.
have that for now.
All right. All right. Do you want to move on?
Yes, next was the bead challenge process.
Sure.
Is that the maps? Is that
Yes.
okay?
Yep. So those of you that have been on the committee for a while, we've been talking and waiting for the bead challenge process for about 4 months now. And of course, right after the election, it came out and was approved. And so we are in the middle of the bead challenge process. What that process is the Public Service Commission has identified every broadband serviceable location in Dunn County, well, in the state of Wisconsin, but in Dunn County, and has created a map using the eligibility requirements that were approved by the federal government for the BEAD grant. This next phase, or this challenge phase, is a place where governments, county governments specifically, and broadband providers can challenge that map to say this location should be eligible or should be ineligible. We will bring up a version. This is not the actual map. We have the data. So at Dunn County, we created our own map using the same data that the Public Service Commission has. And so I wanted to, this is the zoomed out version of that. And as you look at this map, the areas in orange are ineligible, and the areas in blue are eligible for the grant. So this is a very zoomed out version of that. So you can see there's a whole lot of orange, which is, if correct, a good thing. That means that the majority of the county has been covered, which is somewhat what we would have expected. So we know that there is this area in the town of Hay River, Bob, that is blue, just above the village of Wheeler. And that's expected. That is north of where Charter had their area, but still a little bit south of where Mosaic has come in. And then Next Gen Broadband covers the town of Tiffany. So it's really all in Hay River, because the town of Tiffany has been covered by Next Gen Wireless. No. Town of Tiffany is. Town of Hay River has, was zoom too far. There you go. So you can kind of see as I zoom into this area, all of these blue dots are the eligible areas, and then the orange dots around are ineligible, and that's as we would have expected. So that's a good spot, an area that needs to get covered. I'll get into this in a little bit because you can see a little bit of the speckling over in the town of Tiffany, where there's some oranges and blues kind of in that same area, and that exists in another area. I'll kind of explain that in a little bit here. So then as we move to the south a little bit, you can also see then another pocket in the town of Sherman here that is also eligible in that blue, which is another area that we did expect. It actually kind of comes over here. And this is really that same line of this is where Charter's area was in this area, but over here is uncovered. 24/7 has done some work in that area, but not through grants. So this is a pocket that we also expected to see. The other area, it's a lot of work. It's a big map. So the town of Grant is going to be all orange because Grant got the grant. So then this area over here, a little bit to the south of the town of Colfax, from essentially Whitetail Golf Course to the west, is that other pocket that we expected. This is where Bloomer Broadband had applied for a grant there a couple of times. And also just this last week, reached out they were applying for a USDA Reconnect grant. So we provided a letter of support on behalf of the county for that project. We'll see how that goes. I know that's an area they really want to get done, and this is where the most of the inquiries I get is about this particular area.
That's pretty much straight east of Whitetail then, that's.
Yeah, this is Whitetail right here.
Okay.
So yep, just
There, yeah.
yep, just a little pocket. So, yep. So those are kind of the three big areas that I expected to see as eligible. Sorry for all the zooming. And so as we come at this from the county standpoint to decide, hey, do we want to challenge this? We're kind of seeing exactly what I was hoping to see. So we don't really see anything that we need to challenge. There are some additional items that are challengeable. One of them is what is referred to as a community anchor institute or institution. And that definition is something that had to get approval by the federal government and has. But really, you're talking about libraries, community centers, schools, government buildings, different things like that. And what is unique about that is community anchor institutions, the requirement for what is considered served for them is 1 gig by 1 gig symmetric service. So that's really good internet. That's actually what the fiber that the providers in Dunn County are putting in right now. That's the service that they provide. But that is a higher level service than is provided in a lot of different areas. So what is good about that is that there are some areas, and one of them is sitting next to me, the school district of Colfax and the Colfax Library are both community anchor institutions that are not provided gig by gig service. So Charter Spectrum is in the village of Colfax, but can't provide that level of service. So those areas are eligible for BEAD grants, which is, I think, very good news. I wouldn't speculate on who's going to go in and bid on those areas, but my desire or my hope would be that like a Charter Spectrum would bid on that, and the final result of that would be better service for everyone in the village of Colfax. Like they would just kind of upgrade their services within that village and also be able to serve you guys better.
So the school and, but it does, the village itself could, benefit from this. I mean,
The village,
individual homes.
yeah, so technically they wouldn't be eligible for the grant, but in order for, if it were Spectrum, to provide that service to the school district, they would need to upgrade their infrastructure, kind of covering that area, which could have the impact of benefiting
Sure.
others. That would be, don't take my word for it, that's a pure speculation, but I thought that was a pretty good news. And so I went and, as I knew that was a requirement, I specifically went to go check on Colfax because I knew at the village hall, they
Could I
didn't
ask
have
a
that.
question on, thank you. You mentioned the libraries and Colfax not having that really shocked me now. In Dunn County, this committee is also in charge of libraries. You know that.
CRNT is.
So,
CRNT is.
huh?
CRNT is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The CRT I meant, his, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. We have a library in Sand Creek, I assume, and we have one in Elk Mound, but they're a branch of Menominee. I assume, I know Boyceville does. I assume those libraries have adequate broadband coverage.
I could check on Sand Creek. My understanding is Elk Mound and Boyceville are likely to have that service. I will check on all the libraries in the county though and make sure that
Sand
they're.
Creek has pretty well served that township, right? Sand Creek does have a library.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I mean, I'll go verify that
Thank
and make sure that it is. But being that is an area typically covered by Mosaic, my assumption is they are covered by gig service. One of the areas that I knew was that the charter service in the village of Colfax is old. So, no. So.
Dan, I got a
Yep.
question. You said that with a BEAD grant that you can upgrade the service to Colfax and Colfax High School, right?
Colfax Library.
That's Colfax Library and Colfax High School. So could you just tell me what the BEAD grant buys and how much does it cost? I mean, are we buying, what does it mean when you say your BEAD grant will provide service? What does it buy?
So the BEAD grants it's a grant program that are service providers would apply for a grant to cover that area. They would be required to provide a match. Is it 25%? 25% of the total cost of a project would have to be provided by the internet service provider, minimum of 25. And then the grant would cover that additional 75% of the total project cost.
Okay,
So-
so you're saying that the project grant, the BEAD grant is buying cable and buying, or what's it buying? I mean, you know,
Yeah.
what do we have to pay, what do they have to pay for?
Yep. So they would have to pay for the fiber optic cables that need to go in there and the people that need to put it in the ground and the underlying technology that kind of makes it happen.
So what they have now is a substandard cable, and we need a bigger, stronger cable of that more capacity?
Yeah, I don't want to fully speculate, but my guess is the Village of Colfax has copper coaxial cable run through it, your traditional
Yeah.
cable that would have been installed in the 1980s or something around then. So that technology doesn't have the ability to carry the network speeds that fiber optic cable
Okay,
can.
so getting back to answering my question, the BEAD grant will upgrade existing product cable and installation. So I mean, you don't need installers to install something that doesn't need a lot of tech, but if you got fiber optics that the BEAD grant is helping to buy. And, okay.
Yep.
We're buying the product to deliver the service.
And then the service providers will continue to charge for that over time. Big thing is that the cost to run that cable to one house 4 miles down the road costs more than they could ever make back on that. So that's where these grants kind of help make it profitable, or at least net, at least even.
So just following up on the substandard, I don't know what the proper term is, the substandard service that they're now receiving was state of the art and installed when, would you say?
I couldn't tell you when, but it was probably state of the art when it was installed. I would assume
10
in the
years, 20
80s.
years?
I would say probably in the 1980s or 1990s.
Okay. And more than likely, the same providers that put in the existing product would also be putting in the new product?
Yep.
Okay. Got it.
So I said I was going to kind of go in and show you some of the other things that I found to be weird on this challenge map. So this is just outside of the town, just outside of Downsville, town of Dunn. And what you see is little dots of blue right next to oranges. So orange being a location that is served and is ineligible for the grant, but blue is eligible for the grant. And so I'm just going to zoom right into like this spot right here. So what had happened in this is this is essentially a farmstead, right? So you have a house and a barn and another outbuilding and another building, and where the map somewhat failed was it identified all of these as a location. But the providers came in and said, well, no, this is the only location. The other one is a shed that doesn't need to have that. So there is that's where those, when I said there's specklings of blue all around those areas, those are essentially outbuildings that needed to be there. So that would be kind of the one thing that I would look at as saying, hey, that'd be like challengeable. But I've, when we were at, we went to a broadband workshop and I talked with a engineer from 24/7 and actually had emailed back with them and actually while I was there, Next Gen Wireless submitted a challenge for their area. They had that same kind of speckling where they received their grant in the town of Tiffany and New Haven. And so we in talking with them what they actually need to do, this information in these houses or these locations are owned by the FCC, and the providers on a every 6-month basis have to update the FCC to say these are the areas that I cover. And what they now need to do and what they are going to do going forward is there we will consider in this particular case those 4 additional locations are areas that they cover. So what they had done is they went in and said, this is where we provide service, not this is where we would provide service, because we already have that there. So they need to go in and I was emailing with them today and they said, yep, we were been in contact with the Public Service Commission. We know what needs to be done in order to get this cleaned up. So, so I don't know that there's a whole lot that we need to do to challenge. As you can see, it's really just these specklings and those 3 areas that there is a 4th area over here right on the edge of the town of O'Galley. Is one other little pocket that is that needs to be covered. So really in Dunn County, we have that area up in Hay River, a little bit in the town of Sherman, a little bit in the town of Colfax, and that little spot over in O'Galley are the only areas that are uncovered.
So in that situation, I'm sorry. In that situation where you've got the house and it's covered, but the outbuildings are not, but are considered locations, that will be fixed through updating the FCC map, which will carry down to the PSC.
Yeah.
So how will that be handled as part of the BEAD eligibility process? Will they stay blue and be eligible? And if they are, then will projects be built around connecting the barn and shed at those locations?
So the providers were told that they need, if they update it for their next submission, the project map will reflect those updated FCC maps. And yeah, so it's kind of a slow process. So I mentioned that one of the providers had challenged, actually just got some information that as part of the challenge process, within the first 20 days, the Public Service Commission had kind of offered the service of they will look at things and give you a general idea of whether this challenge was going to work or not. And then they would provide you feedback so that they could resubmit before the end of that 30 days. So it's about noon today, they sent out that feedback. And part of it was that in those particular scenarios, the providers were not allowed to challenge that location, because that's not considered one of the challengeable items. So it's got to go back to the FCC in order to do that. But so I guess from my standpoint, what I wanted to kind of to let the committee know is I feel like the map is a pretty true reflection of what we see the county needing, and where we feel like there is needs. And I did talk with the Public Service Commission as well about like, yeah, we don't want a project area that's trying to cover 70 barns that are already theoretically covered. So, and they don't want that either. There's, $1.1 million or $1 billion available, and to use it for something that is essentially already covered would be a waste. So I have no idea why that thing keeps beeping.
But that would actually be easily resolved if somebody did want their barn covered. That area being covered by whatever ISP is involved would be a quick and likely just a real easy fix to get that installed in that location.
Yeah, and that's what it was, is, I mean, they would activate those barns through just a standard activation, just as if you were a house in Downsville and hadn't been covered, you know, oh, sure, we'll turn you up. That doesn't require a grant. That's the infrastructure is already in the ground to serve that. So that was kind of my update on the challenge process. So I guess, yeah, the update is I don't think we need to challenge anything. I will verify though with the Sand Creek Library. I had been in communication with the Colfax Library just this week about a different grant opportunity that they had, and related to kind of broadband and infrastructure, but plans were to let's hold off, and I think we can get them service through BEAD.
I was only gonna, I'm sorry,
No, turn your
Mic on.
mic on. There you go.
I forget that. Regarding schools, and Colfax seems to be the one. I think we should always be careful. We don't say high school, we should say public schools. Because elementary is probably even more important than the high school. So let's make sure we say the public school system of Colfax, which would certainly be true. Most of the school districts don't have a rural school anymore, other than in the city. I don't, except Sand Creek is a school district of Bloomer
Barron, there's a Barron or
Huh?
Bloomer.
or Shitak.
Bloomer, Chautauqua.
Shitak is Sand Creek. And don't they have a school there?
In Sand Creek?
Yeah?
No.
There's no elementary school in Sand Creek, okay.
No.
So those kids all have to go into Shitek?
Correct.
Thank you.
So yeah, this is gives kind of a zoom into the village of Colfax, and you can see this gray dot right here, being the school district, and that's where gray. It's gray because it is a community anchor institute, and eligible. And then you also see it's kind of hard to see the gray that's in the village of Colfax Municipal Building, which is where the library is. And then there's another entity over here. I'm not exactly sure what it is that's been identified as a community anchor institute. So all of the community anchor institute in
Fire station and
right there.
they're two separate.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, here's the rescue squad. So they are actually,
Yeah, and then on the other side of the tracks.
no, there's the fire department. So that one's actually, I can check on those just to make sure that they are identified as a CAI. So that is a challenge that we can do, is say, hey, this is a community anchor institution. They don't necessarily know where all of those are. So that's what I say is about the library. That's kind of the big thing, is just to make sure that it has been identified properly. And I say specifically in like the village here, I think the more spots you have, the greater the opportunity that a provider will bid at it. So, all
Just to
right.
get my head wrapped around this, just a little bit. You got those big blue areas. Those are already spoken for, basically, is kind of what you're saying. And then
They're not spoken for.
for yet, or is that?
So they have not, no, there's no, the BEAD application process hasn't happened yet. They've just been identified
Okay.
as being eligible. So we know when that program comes out, the
One of them,
PSC is gonna circle this area and say, who wants this spot?
Okay, yep,
Um,
right.
And because they are large clumps right next to each other, it will be beneficial for people to do that. And in Dunn County, I mean, for the most part, our providers are all familiar with where everybody is, and we will see Bloomer Broadband apply for the one just south of Colfax, and we'll see Mosaic apply for the one in Hay River, and we will see 24/7 apply for the one in town of Sherman, and probably 24/7 also in O'Galley, unless something on the other, some provider in Pierce County, potentially NTech out of Durand or something like that might get into that O'Galley area, but
Does it have to be, Dan, just the provider that's right around that blue area? Could it be, anybody could bid on this?
Yeah, anybody could bid on it. The way that the process has been, the draft process for approval is round one of approval. They're going to put up these project areas. They're going to identify project areas. And then they're going to say, all right, who wants to bid on these project areas? And then they're going to look at fiber projects. So of all the people that bid, they're going to say, all right, who wanted to put fiber in there? And then they're going to decide whether the amount of money that they put aside for it, as opposed to how much is it going to cost the grant versus how much is going to be provided by the provider, and decide whether that is viable or not. If it is, then they'll award it to that. If it's not, then it'll go down to a secondary process, which will enable different technologies to come in and cover that. The assumption being that fiber is the best option, but it may not be viable. So other providers could come in and do that. It would be really hard for a provider on the other side of the state to provide fiber in that location just because they have to get there. So that's where.
It makes sense to be the local provider,
Yep.
but.
Yep, but that is not a requirement. As you get into the lower phases of that, where you might have fixed wireless coverage, then you could get a more diverse set of applicants.
Are all of the BEAD eligible areas considered unserved, or are some of them underserved?
They are, I believe, unserved, which is also a higher priority. I hesitate through that because the Public Service Commission had identified some areas that are provided by very old DSL technology as being unserved, even though they kind of, depending on how close you are to the home office, you might be served by the definition, and outside of it is unserved. They kind of took away a little bit of that gray area and identified them all as unserved, which is the town of Grant would have been in that category as well. But they are in the unserved area. So that's what you run into around the town of Colfax and Sherman and Hay River. So, all right. That's what I have on the challenge.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on to the next item is the BEAD Volume 2 endorsement.
Yes, so I went into this a little bit. So I talked about the next phase of the process being they were going to create these project category or these project areas. So the whole idea of creating these project areas and how points will be awarded and how all of these different rounds are going to do that I just explained is all in draft unapproved form. So the Public Service Commission is waiting for the federal government to approve their plan for how they're going to award these grants. That being said, it's all out here, and we've been encouraged to start working forward to how are we going to implement that in our area. So what is I guess really this is going to become the important part of this committee going forward is the endorsement process. So this is the scoring matrix that has been proposed. So the minimal bead outlay is worth 40 points. And so that is that percentage of funding that the service provider will provide to the grant. So if they are providing, if they've met that requirement, then they're going to get 40 points. The next one is priority affordability. So this is based on the promotional costs, so the cost of their gig by gig service. So we're just kind of looking at, you can roll that out, but how much is this going to cost people? Because if you're going to roll out a service that's going to be unaffordable, we're not going to give it that many points. So that's what the 23 points here. Fair labor practices, all outlined. I'm on page 32 of a 95-page document here. So the fair labor practices are defined above. And speed to deployment, points of enforceability of deployment faster than 36 months. So a lot of that's going to be the providers providing their story about how good they've done kind of rolling out these things and getting the work done, which has quite frankly been an issue in some past awards where people submitted and had no capacity to actually be able to do that. Not a federal grant program, the RDOF grant program ran into some of those problems, which turned out greatly benefiting Dunn County. So in hindsight. The next
Could
two,
I-
go
Could
ahead.
I ask a question? Thank you. These grants, they're all federal.
Yep.
Very competitive, so we're competing with Barron and Chippewa and Pepin and St. Croix County. Pierce, all of them around us. How,
The whole state of
you might not
Wisconsin.
want to answer this. Competitive is Dunn County in this.
So in past public service grants, we have far outpaced our neighbors in getting these grants. And by we, I mean our service providers. So we've done a really good job. They've done a really good job. And a lot of the previous awards were highly based on the amount of matching funds provided by the service providers. So our service providers were putting out a lot of risk in order to be able to cover those areas, and that's what's kind of put them over the top, I think. So the next part, the next two areas are really where this group comes in. You have 5 points awarded for demonstrating community support in local or tribal coordination. So there's some, I'll get down there, but that's kind of, having a meeting with a town hall meeting to say, hey, we want to put broadband here, who's interested, and getting letters of support from the town, from the school districts, from other entities in there. So that type of work, these service providers can get 5 points for putting in that kind of work. The next one is 7 points, and this is to receive an endorsement by local government or tribe. And what they mean by that is an endorsement of support by the county. So if a provider wants to get these 7 points, they need a resolution from the county board that says we are in favor of that project. So when you talk about multiple bids, so if somebody is going to bid on an area in Dunn County and they want to get these 7 points, they have to come talk to us. And if 2 people want to bid on that same area, we get to decide and have been encouraged to decide between the two of them. Endorsing two projects in the same area would not be a good idea. So, really, there's a factor of about 12 points overall that can be awarded through community interaction.
So I have another question.
Mm-hmm.
So does that mean, Dan, that this committee would move to support it, and we take it to our county board? And then that would act on it? That might take 2 months
Yeah.
or
So
longer.
I need to figure out from probably the Public Service Commission, but also Corporation Council about how we go about that. So I have this open. As you were just asking me about it, this is why I had the ordinance that created this committee open. We wrote in when we created this ordinance that the committee would be in charge of evaluating broadband projects in Dunn County and providing letters of support on behalf of Dunn County for broadband grant applications. So our intent around that was to not have to take it from this committee to the executive committee to the county board in order to pass a resolution, knowing that the time frame for these things could be difficult. That was the intent around that. Now the question comes in is, do the words that we wrote here match with what has been approved in that? Because I think what we wouldn't want to do is have this committee resolve it. And then when the Public Service Commission says, no, it needs to come from the full county board, so you don't get the 7 points. So the other part that had come from the workshop that we were at, and the service providers were there as well. And we now have some relationships with them. Like, they need to be aware of our timelines. So when we understand when they have to submit these things, we have to kind of reach out to them and say, if you are going to submit a project that needs to be done, this is the meeting that you need to target for us to look at that in order to do that, because it could take 2 months. So I think it kind of goes both ways. My hope would be that this committee could do it directly, but
It's my, may I interrupt you? It's my understanding that an ordinance is made by a county board or town board or a major board.
Mhm.
And what we could do, what was the other one?
Resolution.
Resolution is made by a county or anybody within the county could actually do that, any committee.
Yep.
Am I mistaken on that? Is that? I think anybody
Yes.
can make a resolution and it becomes,
Correct.
right?
Yeah, so this committee could create a resolution for
Right.
that. So
And-
this is the actual verb, the words that are written in that proposal. So it says, the county and or tribe where the project is located takes official action at a noticed open meeting to affirmatively endorse the project. The action is memorialized in public minutes and an official letter of endorsement is provided. So I would say that, yes, this committee could do that. But I think, yeah, we want to talk to the PSC and say, hey, this is all the stuff that we have in place. If we do it this way, would you assume that we would get our 7 points? Because if we need to put it through the county board, we'll put it through the county board. But that is not the preference. So that's something that I will kind of take away is, all right, we'll find out if we need to do that. But either way, the path, if it did have to go through the county board, is it would come to this committee and go to executive and then go to the full board. So,
Dan, what's a time frame on that? Time frame or a deadline or?
when this would need to be done?
Yeah.
No, so this proposal is still pending federal approval. What they have said is they would like to start this grant round this summer. Or this proposal process this summer. So it's going to be one of those things that when all of a sudden the NTIA approves this, I'm going to get 42 emails from everybody out there that says, hey, we're gonna have a workshop on this and we're gonna do this and we're gonna do all this. And Dave will receive the same emails and we will, and then we'll kind of work through that. But that's the same time that the service providers are gonna find out and everybody is gonna find out. So it's a lot of wait, and then everything hits really fast.
Is there any way to draft some kind of resolution
Say, Bill,
to get it tabled first?
hate to interrupt you, but could you grab a microphone? I got it. No,
Trying to use
otherwise
this
you
as
can't
well.
hear it. Otherwise they can't hear you.
Sorry about that. My question was, can we get ahead of this and draft, at least frame out a resolution and have it somewhat ready based on past experience? All we have to do is tweak this once we get final, guidance or final
Yep.
direction on it, I guess, so.
Yep, we will get those kind of a template of that resolution ready and yeah, and making sure that the providers are aware, like, this is who you need to talk to and this is who is going to
Now,
be
would we write that up or do you have corporate write that up?
corp counsel.
Corporate, okay.
Would I want to get a resolution from the town board of Hay River to present to this committee? Would that help with, say, a resolution from the board and maybe signatures from the people that are affected on my 4 dead end roads?
Yeah, so when the proposals come out for that area, so that's, I scrolled up again here, this area this number 5 section is the points that are awarded by essentially through like municipalities and other areas. So, they can get a total of 5 points for local coordination. And that includes 2 points for evidence of a public meeting to engage the community. 2 points for letters of support from a municipal government. So that's where your town board letter can help get additional points for a project.
It would help if I got the ball rolling on that. The town board moves so slow. I mean, good God.
So
It takes them 3 months to decide to put a $10 toilet plunger in,
yeah. So, yeah, there's some work that you could do so this is only a letter of support from the municipal government. So it doesn't have that same requirement of it needs to be in a public meeting and it needs to be all of these things. That letter could simply be a letter from the chair of the town board. So you could write up a proposal. Now, these letters are specific to each project. So if that area in Hay River is one project, then you could just write one letter. But if they broke that up into like 2 different project areas and
If 2 different providers,
so the PSC is going to kind of like draw boundaries and say, this is a project area. Who wants to bid on this area? So the PSC could take that area in Hay River and make that 2 project areas, at which point you may have the same provider that bids on 2 different project areas right next to each other.
or you
and
could
that
have
would be
2 different providers.
Or you could have 2 different providers, but either way, it'd be 2 letters of support. So we can help you with that. I can help you with exactly what needs to be done there. The providers will help you with that. They want the points.
Yeah.
But I think the big thing is especially if you have 2 providers for the same area, your government, your municipal government is going to want to decide which one do you want, because providing it to both of them is just going to kind of mix up the whole, like it doesn't differentiate it.
Because the ones that do Tiffany would be easier to talk into coming down. If Spectrum won't do it,
Mhm.
and they're the obvious first choice, but the ones that do Tiffany would be the second choice rather than the ones north coming down through all the, there's no roads or nothing they could follow.
So that's where, I mean, yeah, as those things come in, likely your two other providers will have talked. I wouldn't say they're territorial, but they don't like to encroach on other people's territories. So it may be something like you go talk to one of them and say, oh, we really can't do it. Say, would you mind if I go and talk to this other provider and see if they would do that? And they would do that. They'll work together with that. They did a little bit of that in the Village of Colfax in the northwest corner, where Mosaic and 24/7 kind of just worked around each other in order to optimize where they already had equipment or where they had things in order to cover
We
that
got a
area.
meeting in a couple of weeks. I'll get the ball rolling on that. And
Yep.
please plant the bug.
Yep. So yeah,
Thank
so
you.
you get 2 points for the public meeting. That's the provider would do that. 2 points for their letter of support from your municipality, and then 1 point for a school district, library, and different areas like that. So is it Boyceville School District? Yeah. So, and I'm certain the school district would sign a letter of support.
I've done 3 already. Yeah, so, yeah.
I suppose because that's where their kids are on some of these forts and they want the kids signed up.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
This kind of comes into play in two ways. One, if you have a project area and you have multiple internet service providers that are bidding on that project area, the municipality can kind of pick which one makes the most sense from an economic standpoint or whatever perspective, so that the municipality gets a chance to weigh in. The other side of this is every grant application, every proposal that an internet service provider is making statewide will be looking for these 12 points. So to come up short on these 12 points puts that project area, even if there's only one internet service provider making a proposal, puts them at a disadvantage compared to other projects in other areas that may have gotten all 12 of these points.
And we were just talking about proposal to Bloomer Broadband, one in Colfax. They were like a point away. These 12 points, when these bids happen or when these grants are awarded, the difference between winners and losers is points, like a point. So these are 12 points that theoretically would be a pretty easy and in the control theoretically of the provider to be able to get them. And that's where also we have the most control from the government standpoint. So, and once again, I'll reiterate, this is a draft, hasn't been approved yet, but we were told, start working towards this because when it happens, it's going to happen like that. So, but in general, I think as all of this was happening, the PSC before they put these together did a lot of outreach, and I would say they did a really good job of taking the feedback from our local governments to say, hey, we want to say in how this is happening, and to put this in here, I think was a good move and beneficial for us. That's my endorsement update.
So the West Wisconsin and the 24/7, they went through and did all their customers way before all this all happened. So we've had it since, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years already, so. But they can actually expand from now to other places. Is that something they could do?
So they did do a lot of grants. So they had a grant in town of Menominee, town of Lucas, actually three grants now in the town of Lucas, Sheridan, Tanner, and Red Cedar were all were all grants that 24/7 did, which is outside of their traditional area. Their traditional area was kind of around Downsville and the southern part of the county. But so they moved up and pretty much cover most of everything around Menominee, up until Mosaic starts coming down from the north. So, yeah, so they have outside, they did their original area, but then after that, it's all been grants, and that's that expansion. It's their original area that's got that speckle. Because when they do the grants, if I go back to my, this little picture over here is a picture of the grants. So you'll see, like, when they did this grant for the town of Tanner, they just picked the town of Tanner. So they just drew a box around the whole town of Tanner. So as the challenge process came in, the Public Service Commission said, oh, the whole town of Tanner. So there should be no there should be no service locations in the town of Tanner that aren't covered by a grant. But we saw the speckles down in here where their normal coverage is. And then we saw the speckles up here where this was a next gen grant where they actually kind of drew their lines down the road. So they didn't know whether this house was covered or that house was covered. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Ready to move on? Scheduling and wrap up?
All right. Stop sharing. So we had kicked the meeting. I think in the past we had been meeting on the third Thursday. Is that correct? Yeah, we had been meeting on the third Thursday. This is actually the fourth Thursday. I did that because the room was full last Thursday. And we had skipped our April meeting. So do we want to go back onto the third Thursday schedule? That is June 20th. June 20th works?
Yes. Same
Okay.
time.
Yes, 1 o'clock, June 20th, 2024. And I will send something out. Thursday, June 20th.
Right? 18th of June?
20th of June. 20th. Thursday, that'd be a third Thursday.
Oh, that's right.
All right.
That's all right with everybody. We'll have it the 20th of June and next month, and then
Just, could I ask one touchy question? Where, way back when, I remember we started this and I was on the county board. Townships were, when you had COVID funds, okay? Those funds are used up, I think. And the townships were contributing money into it from COVID funds. And would it be ever something to us consider as a committee to recommend to you to take to the county board to say that we should be looking at the budget of financial support of some of these projects? Or is it shot dead in the water?
we have been using our ARPA money for that.
Yeah, but that's used up now.
Well, it's scheduled out for ahead though, for so far.
So
Well, the county is used up.
these
The term,
grants, you could not use ARPA funds
Oh, you couldn't?
for just because of the timing. So we have to have our ARPA funds, what's the term they use, but
Yeah,
committed
committed.
by
Committed.
the end of this year.
Didn't we do that though? I thought we did that.
Yeah, and they are committed
Committed,
and
yeah.
expended by the end of next year. And the intent around these bead grants is that they would not be
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
shovel in the ground in that amount of time.
Okay,
So, but to your point, it is completely within the purview of this committee to ask the county board for budget to be able to put towards grants.
well, thank you. I think on the agenda, Mr. Chairman, and you and Larry are on the county board. It's worth considering that maybe on the agenda at our June meeting, we should. I'm not talking about a big amount of money. I'm just talking about sometimes a little commitment goes a long ways. And I know county board budgets are tight. Only maybe for discussion. Thank you.
We could throw that on the agenda for next meeting. We good. Anything else from anybody? Take a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? All right, first and second, meeting adjourned.